and welcome to the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency podcast, Civil Rights and You, the show that focuses on federal, state, and local civil and human rights issues and how they may impact your daily life. My name is Charles Bryson, Director of the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, under the auspices of Mayor Lyda Cruzen, and your host. Playing as the intro theme, as always, is Ronnie Jordan, The Antidote, and we do not have the rights to that song. Wish I did. The podcast can be seen at Facebook Live and recorded at mycitymymusic.com. Today we are going to talk about Big Brothers and Big Sisters, I think, of Eastern Missouri. Is that correct? Okay. With us today is Kate Dopich, who is the Chief Program Officer, I think. That's what I read on bio. And Sal Martinez, who is a former board member for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I will say a big couple, or is that right?
Couples match, that's correct.
Big couple with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kate, tell us a little bit about Big Brothers Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here. We are a organization that is 105 years old in St. Louis. Our roots are actually in the legal community. We were founded by juvenile court judges that saw young folks coming into their courtroom and wanted to get in front of it. So it was a juvenile court judge that started our program, and
Shift to your left a little bit.
A juvenile court judge that started our program and wanted to place caring adults in the lives of children, and we are still doing that 105 years later.
Now, have you all always been, well, let me ask this. My understanding is there's actually a national Big Brothers Big Sisters, and you all are affiliate of that?
That's correct. So it's Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. There's about 260 affiliates nationwide. Our agency is about sixth in size, but we have been recognized twice in the last 10 years as Agency of the Year because of our long-lasting matches. We actually have the longest-lasting matches in the country.
Now, what's your service area?
So we serve St. Louis City, St. Louis County. We go to Jefferson County, Cape Girardeau County, and then we go out to St. Charles County as well.
So that's a pretty large swath. Do you have offices in all of those?
We have our main offices in St. Louis City, right next to the Fox Theater on Grand. And then we have an outreach office in Cape Girardeau and an outreach office in St. Charles.
Okay. And I'm assuming it's a lot of staff as well and a lot of traveling in between.
We do. We have staff in those offices. Agency-wide, we're about 90 staff members that make up the team of Big Brothers Big Sisters. But then we have wonderful volunteers, about 1,400 volunteers that are active every day mentoring with our youth.
Wow, that's a lot. Where do you get your funding from?
So we have a pretty diversified source. Certainly United Way is an amazing partner of ours, and we are so appreciative of their support. But we're made up of support from the generous St. Louis community, whether it be corporations or individuals. We do also get some funding from the state of Missouri, and then, of course, other grants and foundations that we are able to partner with.
Now, you start out by talking that people in the judicial system noticed the need. Was there an absence of males, an absence of uncles, fathers? What was that need, and does that need continue today? Sort of the same vein.
Yeah, it's a great question. When we meet the youth today that are interested in becoming a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, typically there's an absence of something. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no father or no mother, although about 75% of our families are single parent households. But what I'd say more often we see is more an absence of connection. And I think in today's world where we have more tools and gadgets to connect more than ever, we are still losing connection with people. And we are behind screens often and not enough with people. And I think that was that need was found 105 years ago, that youth need connections with people that care about them and adults that care about them. And I think it's absolutely present today, and quite frankly, maybe even more.
Is the need the same for males and females?
So I think when we think about what youth need, there
And youth being what ages?
Sure. So we serve we will match a youth between the ages of 5 and 17. So that whole school age gamut from kindergarten to senior year of high school. We're excited to meet and match and mentor those young people. I think we see the need both from boys and girls that enter our program. The need for volunteers. What we often want to make sure we're sharing is that we do have a need for more male role models. When we look at the kind of numbers and pull back the curtain on Big Brothers Big Sisters, what we see is that typically we have female volunteers volunteering at a rate 2 to 1 for male volunteers, and we do have more little brothers or boys coming into our program raising their hands saying that I want a big brother in my life. So we do have a need for more male mentors in our program.
Sal, you were on the board for how many years?
Over a decade.
And why did you originally join the board, other than being asked? We know that, but why stay for 10 years?
Sure. Well, my first experience with Big Brothers Big Sisters is when at that time I was serving as chairman of the board of the St. Louis Housing Authority, and like Kate mentioned, most of the households that the Housing Authority serves are headed up by single parent households, and we had quite a few young people who were devoid of mentors and positive role models in their lives. And so I ran into their CEO, Becky James Hatter, and we kind of talked about what our respective organizations were involved with. And we appealed to the Danforth Foundation and some other funders to provide resources for us to create matches. So shortly thereafter, that was certainly a wonderful partnership. Becky and some of the board members asked if I would consider serving on the board, and obviously I was very honored to be asked. And the organization is just so wonderful, it's so impactful. It's got a great board, a great staff, and it's one of those organizations where you can truly see the impact in the lives of the individuals who you are there to serve. And so the 10 plus years that I served was certainly a breeze, and proud to still be associated with the agency today.
No, and we'll talk about your association in a minute, but I want to get back to, so you were out literally doing another job and saw there was a need. How did you begin to convince people that there was a resource possibly available to assist them?
Well, I think that it became pretty obvious through the work that our resident initiatives department was doing, and is still challenged to do today. I'm back at the Housing Authority as a chairman, so history has in fact repeated itself. But I heard nothing but great things about the organization. A lot of our local elected officials had been very supportive of the organizations. A lot of our corporate and business leaders had just repeatedly said positive things about the organization. And when I met with Becky and Kate and the other staff there, they let us know that they were not afraid of the population that we serve. They were not afraid to match adults who wanted to serve young people in some of the crime-ridden neighborhoods that exist in the city of St. Louis that include our developments. And so they under-promised and over-delivered as it relates to the partnership, and I have personally witnessed the impact that they have made in so many lives of our young people and the bigs. This program is quite unique in that not only do the littles benefit from being matched, but the bigs benefit as well. And so that is a return on investment.
How did they benefit?
Well, just the experience with the young people. Young people can teach us all a lot. In my advanced stage today, I certainly love to be around young people because they're so inquisitive. They're not intimidated by so many of the things that us adults are, as you talk about technology and things like that. They readily embrace it. And so I have been taught so many things by young people, and just their curiosity about the world, how things work, and the questions that they ask. And so if anything, it makes an old guy like me feel like I have some wisdom to impart, given the experience that I've had and the things that I've been blessed to experience. It certainly feels wonderful to give back.
Kate, how are people, we've talked a little bit of how littles come to be. How are bigs come to be? How are they recruited?
Yeah, so we try a lot of different ways to get the word out that this is a really wonderful volunteer experience. We do anything from some opportunities like this to share the word, print media as well. We certainly access the social media outlets to get other word out there. We also have a series of lunch and learns that we'll offer to corporations or organizations that will have time and space for us to come in. We actually bring the lunch. We just ask for at least 10 folks that are really serious about getting involved, and we come and do about a 45-minute presentation, bring lunch, and talk about what the opportunity is to volunteer. But I would say the biggest opportunity, so we're kind of pushing all those efforts out there as an organization. But what's undeniably important are those 1,400 volunteers that are acting with their feet every day and doing the work, and then telling a good friend or telling a family member or telling a neighbor. And that is and continues to be our biggest referral source, is just sharing your experience.
And so you can volunteer both as a business or corporation entity and also as an individual.
So our businesses and corporations can invite us in, and we will talk to their team members about becoming individual bigs. And then we have had some corporations partner with us in our programs where we partner with our schools through our ABC Today School initiative, and businesses have partnered with us in that program.
How short are you with both males and females of having, here, I'll ask the question another different way. How many kids are like in the pipeline wanting a mentor, wanting a big brother or big sister?
Yeah, so we have about 750 youth that are waiting today.
And I'm sure that by the time you get to the office, that number will increase.
You bet. And we actually made the decision over 10 years ago to manage our waiting list in a way that 750 is still an incredibly large amount, but previously it was getting even larger, and we felt at some point it's not fair to make an empty promise to a family. So we manage that waiting list and take referrals where we think we're going to have headway, where we think we're going to get volunteers in that area, so that we can keep that rolling. We'll make over 400 matches this year with little brothers and little sisters. So we always want to have youth that are engaged and excited about being a part of our program. But we also want to be careful that we're not giving empty hope or empty promise to a parent or caregiver that calls our organization.
For both of you, what appears to be the biggest hurdle when you're talking to a prospective big, or you're talking to somebody that you know and trying to get them in the pipeline? What seems to be some of the biggest hurdles? Is it they feel like they don't have the time? Is it feel like, even though I've been all over the website, so I know how much time is expected. Mm-hmm. But, all my family and, I have kids, or it's a money issue, or it's whatever. What seems to be some of the biggest hurdles?
Yeah, I do think time is a hurdle. I think a lot of folks are really connected and spreading themselves thin these days, and think, oh gosh, how could I fit this in? How would this work? And that's where we really try to do some great education of letting folks know that this is a piece where it's a relationship in your life. It's not really a program that you clock in and clock out of, that it's a young person that becomes a part of what you're planning to do anyways. So the time piece starts to really diminish after that relationship gets created. So it's important for us to share that. I think there's, you kind of mentioned that word of intimidating. It's intimidating to start something new. It's intimidating to build a relationship with someone you don't know, or that you wouldn't typically come in contact with. And I think we are continuing to see that problem throughout our community and throughout our world. So we need more folks that are willing to open themselves up to that idea and open themselves up to relationships that are maybe a bit beyond their comfort zone. And we need to talk about how simple it really is. And I think there is also probably a misconception about why youth are involved in our program. Despite 18 years of working at this organization, I am every day floored by the generosity and the trust that parents call and put into our organization. To be willing as a parent to, one, ask for help, and to, two, trust another organization with your child is unbelievable. And that is a story we don't tell enough.
Because I'm sure some of that is possibly guilt that I am not providing, or I'm not able, quote unquote, to provide for my child in a wide variety of ways that I'm supposed to. So I am allowing somebody who I don't know, who's not a family member, to come in and help me, literally, and I'll say this, raise my child.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, for any parent, it's intimidating to know to have all the dreams you have for your child and to wonder how to get there. But I don't know one parent that doesn't want more for their child. And I think that's what we see in the parents that call us. And they see this as one avenue to continue to get to that more.
So what do you, I know you're in part of agreement with Kate, but what other things are difficult barriers for you as you talk to people in the community?
Sure, I think, I'd like to echo Kate's sentiment. The time commitment is something that makes some folks reluctant. The other thing I have found, particularly amongst adults who don't either have children or have not been around children in their lives, are nervous about whether or not they would be able to entertain a child or assist them in exploring new things, particularly, am I cool enough for this child? And so, there's some reluctance there. And so over the years, I've talked to many adults who ended up becoming bigs, and I said, you don't have to plan these, magnificent outings. Sometimes it's just taking the child to the park. Sometimes it's taking the child to a community garden or to the library. The time is the real thing. You are there to listen to that child, to help that child explore the world. And so it's not as daunting as you may be thinking in your mind. And so that's a message that I continue to deliver. And it was a message that I delivered to my wife before we were officially matched, because she asked me those questions. What types of things can we do? How can we keep him engaged? How will we know that he's having a good time and what have you? I'm blessed to have an adult daughter from a previous relationship. And my daughter's an only child, and so she had not been around a lot of children in her life. And but I'm very proud to say, so far so good with our new match. We've had nothing but great times with our new little brother.
Okay, I'm going to explore that and just say, you all have a lot of programs. It's not just we're matching people with other people. Tell me a little bit about the Amachi program.
Yeah, so the Amachi program is something that undergirds our matching program. So it is essentially the same in terms of the relationship. It's a big brother match with a little brother, or a big sister match with a little sister. But what's unique about this population is that all of the youth in our Amachi program have one or more parent incarcerated. And that makes up about 25% of the youth that we serve have a parent or caregiver incarcerated
so how
at
are
time
the
of match.
How are the kids referred? I'm assuming you're allowing the parent who's incarcerated to make that referral?
That's certainly possible. We work with Missouri State Department of Corrections, and there are referral forms in the adult institutions in the state of Missouri, so that they can make a referral, and they can make a referral to any Big Brother Big Sister throughout the state of Missouri. We partner with our other sibling organizations in Missouri to make sure that those referrals can be heard and accepted. The other piece where that comes from is the caregiver that is still at home. That there really aren't many systems in place when an adult is incarcerated. There's no system in place for what happens to those children. So commonly, it's a family member that steps up and starts to fill that void. And often we get calls from those family members of wanting that youth to be involved in our program.
Because I would not be surprised if they are almost desperate for help, because they're dealing with a range of emotions. The child is dealing with a range of emotions, some of which you just have to have a big in your life to take some of that stress away, I would think. Yeah,
it's an overwhelming time, and with a lot of questions and not many answers. And I think we all can relate as from a human side of when you're in those overwhelming times, what we all need is to know that there are people that care about us and love us and want to be with us.
So we've talked a little bit about bigs, but we haven't talked about how one gets to be a big. What's the screening process?
So we have a fairly simple process for the volunteer who raises their hand and is excited about this opportunity. They start with an application online, and then that information goes straight into our office so that we can start that relationship with the volunteer. The next step is that we would call or text or email, whatever is your preference, and schedule a volunteer interview. And those interviews happen in our office. And that's a time for us to get to know that volunteer, get to know who they are, what their interests are. Also a time for us to do some individualized training, make sure they understand what the program is, answer any and all questions that they might have. And then we, after that interview is done, that's where our team really, the rubber hits the road for our team and getting the work done. We're working back with references. Of course, we do things like background checks, and really trying to assess if this is the right volunteer opportunity for this individual, and if so, what is the best match for this individual.
So there's two things. One is how I personally score, using that phrase loosely, but the second is if in fact I am accepted as a volunteer, as a big, the match part is the other. Is that difficult as well, or how do you determine which youth should be with which adult?
Yeah, so I would say it's a little bit of science and art all at the same time. Right, that that it's the benefit of being 105 years young, that we have a lot of experience in knowing what works and what doesn't, and we are an organization that is a little bit nutty about the numbers and looking at all the statistics of when our matches work and when they don't, and trying to make sure we fail forward. And so if we find a mistake that we've made or a place where it didn't work, how we apply that to our learning for the next time. So we have a set of pieces that we look at when we make those matches of understanding what we believe goes into the equation of a solid match, and it's a combination of a lot of things. And we want to make sure we're looking at the youth that have waited the longest. We want to make sure that we're aligning interests. After all, this is a relationship, and every relationship in our life takes work, and you've got to have some thread, some piece that ties you together of some kind of interest, that I want to be with this person, because there are so many valid excuses not to be. We are all busy. We all do have other demands that are priorities in our life. So want to.
There is such thing as for lack of a better term, an interest survey. So if I'm interested in art, I need to sort of be paired with a youth that likes art versus a youth that likes sports, and I hate sports.
You betcha. So we're going to work hard to make sure we are understanding those interests, and then try to understand age range of what the volunteers thinking about. If the teenagers are really that's your jam, that's who you want to work with, or like, no, I want to go on the younger side, that kind of thing. So just trying to get all of that combined, and then we have to look at some logistics. We want to make sure we're going to do our best to make sure it's not over a 15-20 minute drive. Right, you can have a really we could find a really great match, but if it's a 50-minute drive to get to that young person, at some point that could get tiring. So all of those pieces go into play.
To Sal's point, I would assume during part of the interview process is, do you have children? And if you have children, what do you think the reception will be when you bring this little into the house or in your environment, I should say?
Mm-hmm. So we, a lot of our volunteers do have children of their own. And in fact, we about 5 years ago started piloting a program called Big Families. So you can be a big brother, a big sister, a big couple, or a big family, because we knew that we were, when we were doing recruitment of volunteers, we were really specifically leaving out a huge portion of folks in their life that were in the middle of the muck of raising young people and thinking, again, to the time piece, how do I make time if I have to separate all these pieces in our life? And so what we wanted to do is say, is there a way you don't have to separate it? Is there a way that this young person can be part of the entire family experience? And we want to be careful in how that's done, right? So that's why we have been piloting this program. It's not huge. So of our 1,400 matches, we have about 30 big families. So it's not something that we wanted to just broadcast on the front page of the Post, right, and say, come one, come all. We wanted to really learn. And we still do a screening process for those volunteers. We actually go out and meet their children to make sure they're ready for this opportunity. But we think that there's a lot of benefits to that. And we think there's a lot of benefits to for the volunteers as well. Our first big family match that we made after in the continual learning process, I was talking to the big sister member of the big family and asked her how it was going and what reflections she had so far. And this was about 9 months into the match. And she said, I was worried that we weren't going to have the time. I was worried that it was going to be a logistical nightmare, quite frankly. But she said, what I'm finding is that we're more intentional about family time as a whole. Because we used to spend every weekend dropping off at soccer practice here and dance and all of that. And we didn't have that much time together. And now, every other weekend, we have a set activity that we are all doing together. And we're inviting another young person with us.
Interesting. So 10 years on the board, Sal, numerous other years that you've been involved or knowing about Big Brother, Big Sister. What made you to make the decision to be a big couple?
Well, my wife and I have been thinking about it for a while. Big Brothers Big Sisters hosts pretty regular recruiting events where they talk about the opportunities that are there to be matched either as an individual or via a couples match. And we went to a few of those events, and we have been thinking about it, and we finally made a determination that it was time to officially apply and go through the process. My wife and I, have been thinking about it, and we lead a very active lifestyle, and so we thought it would be great to finally apply, and in hopes that we could incorporate a little in many of the things that we do, which are often in the community. Where my wife and I are very involved in gardening, and we go to outdoor concerts, and we love to go to restaurants here in the city of St. Louis. And we thought, how fun would it be to bring a little along who maybe does not have the opportunity to experience these types of things on a regular basis, if ever. And so we just finally made the decision. Life is short. We want to have this experience in our lives, and so we finally applied and went through the process that Kate described. It was very pain-free, but yet it was an extensive screening process, and certainly is one that I can appreciate as a parent. They're very intentional. They're very strategic about how they make these matches happen. And so they ask us a lot of questions. I know they ask our little and his mother and his siblings a lot of questions to go through the process of ensuring that the match made sense. And as I mentioned briefly before, so far so good. I think we're all involved are very excited, and I certainly want to thank staff at Big Brothers Big Sisters for bringing him into our lives at this time.
Now, did you and Allison have to do some reflection or analysis of what that would mean to your life? Because you all are out. I've seen you at concerts. I've seen you all over the place, and well, man, I got to spend time with little.
Right.
So walk me through that, because I'm sure that took some time and some conversation. You just can't get up and get a plane ticket and go out of town, because you really, part of your life now is a little.
Absolutely. So yeah, we did talk about that quite a bit, and at the end of the day, our analysis came up with the conclusion that this little would enhance our lives as much as we hope to enhance his. And, certainly, for example, my wife and I have been known to enjoy an adult beverage or two. And so that is certainly not appropriate when you are spending time with the little. And so we had those conversations that we would have to make sure that whatever plans we had, either before we pick up that little, that we have to behave accordingly. And so we certainly want to provide him with the most safe environment and responsible environment that we can put him in. But when we worked out the formula, what we would be giving up versus what we would be gaining, the calculation was very, very simple. And so, but yeah, we did have those conversations. It is a commitment. We certainly do not want to disappoint him, and we will not disappoint him. And so those calculations and those thought processes had to happen, and we're very glad that we made the decision that we did.
How old is he?
He is 6 years old.
I'm going to ask him, but I'm going to chime in. Was part of the determination also the age of which you were interested in having a little?
Yeah, we were very hopeful that we would be matched with a younger big.
Younger little.
Younger little. That's right. That's right.
That's why I'm the host.
I wish I was young, but yeah, I digress. So yeah, we did want to be matched with a younger little because we thought it was important to try to begin the process of imparting important experiences to a child who was still in their younger stages of life, and so we're very pleased and excited when in fact we were matched with. He was actually 5 years old when we first were initially informed of the match, and he just recently turned 6 years old, and so we're very excited that was able to happen.
Can I request a particular age range, and how does that conversation take place?
Yeah, we certainly ask every volunteer actually what they have in mind, and that's really part of the job of our interviewers, is for them to kind of get in the head of the volunteer and see they've already painted some picture, and we're just trying to get in and get a chance to see it. Of what do you think this is going to be like, right? So if we ask volunteers and they say, "Gosh, I just really want to talk to a young person. I really want to have these great conversations about what they want to do next." well, we're probably not going to match you with a 5-year-old, right? They're not thinking about who they want to be, except in the, grandiose ideas. We're probably thinking teenager for that. So it's a combination of what, specifically, what do you have in mind when you think of age? And then what our staff's job is to combine that with also the activities of interest. If you say, I just really want to go see St. Louis sights, go to the zoo, we're probably not going to match you with a 16-year-old, right? They've probably been there and done that, and that is not as joyful about those opportunities anymore.
Sal, I'm sure you had some notion of how this all worked because you were on the board, but now that you are a big, how do you, I don't want to use the word handle, but what is your interaction with the little's mother and family?
Sure. Well, my wife and I are both in regular contact with our little's mother. She's a wonderful lady. She encourages us to pick him up as often as we would like, and to expose him to things that we think would be interesting and beneficial to him. So we have a great relationship. We've picked our little up both from his home and from his mom's place of employment. We have texted her, and she's texted us during the outings to say if you want to keep him longer, you can, and so it's just been great. She's a very devoted mother, and I'm impressed by the fact that she is committed to whatever is in the best interest of her son, and she has told my wife and I both how appreciative she is that we have made this commitment to her and her family to support her son in every way that we can.
Kate, we talk a little bit about, we've talked about the bigs and we've talked about the littles. How do you get the parents of the little ready for this process?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think something that perhaps I didn't mention earlier when we were talking about barriers to why someone would want to become a volunteer, I think sometimes it's also a barrier of, will it even work? Right? What if they don't like me? All those pieces. So our staff play a big piece in that, and from the get-go, I'm really getting to know the parents and making sure that they're a full partner in this. We never want our parents to feel like this is some type of substitute coming in, or that their needs and desires for their children aren't just as important. They are the parent. They are the one that presses the go button and presses the stop button at any point. So to prepare our parents for that, because sometimes they think our parents don't feel necessarily empowered to say no, we go to the home and interview both the youth and the parent so that we can start a relationship, quite frankly, and ask them what they have in mind. What picture did they paint when they think about Big Brothers Big Sisters, and what that looks like for them, making sure that it is the right volunteer experience or right program for their child. And then what we do is we start in a conversation in their home and on their sofa or in their living room, a conversation about what it's going to look like to partner. And we truly call it our Parents as Partners training, and talk about what we hope for that relationship to look like, what we want that to look like with our staff, and what we want that to look like with the volunteer big in the life of their child, because it's their voice and their role is critical. It's critical for that young person to feel like this is okay, right? Mom's good with this, right? You always want to make mom happy as a young person. And for them to feel valued and honored in their requests, that the volunteer isn't coming in with their own agenda of what's going to happen, that it's going to be a partnership. And that's where our staff is there throughout the relationship. We never leave. We're there until high school graduation and actually beyond now, supporting that relationship, checking in on a very regular basis with the young person, the parent caregiver, and the volunteer big to make sure all of those pieces are clicking the way we'd want them to.
One of lines not to be crossed is being a big versus being a parent. And I'm sure you all spend a lot of time having that conversation, because I would also guess that a child may not have been out in various places, and so there's a need to to have a conversation about, when you're out here, this is the way you behave. How do you all approach that conversation?
Yeah, so, I think that's where we have to remind our volunteers that they are a mentor. And mentoring to me and to us is more show you the way versus tell you the way, and be that role model. It doesn't leave out a coaching conversation from time to time of,
I like
hey,
that.
this is
That's what I did as a parent. I coached.
Yeah,
yes, I like that.
and we all need coaches, right? No matter how old we are, we still need mentoring in our life. And while I hope some of the reasons that kids come to our agency, we can, as a community, start to address some of those pieces. But I don't ever see a world where mentoring is not going to be needed for all of us at any age in the continuum. So we want our volunteers to be coaches, and to give advice. But it's a fine line to walk, and that's where our staff are there, and sometimes we have to pull back, right, and say, I hear you. I know what you want to have happen. I know you want to just tell them the answer and have them pick that right back up. But it doesn't always work that way, and that may not be the way mom or aunt or grandma, whoever's in the home, want it to go either. So we have to walk that line and make sure all the adults are on the same page, and that's the tricky part. Usually the kids are fine. It's getting the adults to behave.
Because I would also suggest the opposite, that I want you to help me parent my child, whether it is stated that way or not. There's some sort of, I've done the best I can, I need your help to be that other piece there,
Yeah.
which also brings in other issues, I'm sure, but I'm sure that is also part of that conversation.
Yeah, it definitely is, and so we not only had conversations with the staff at Big Brothers Big Sisters about those types of issues, but certainly we have talked to our little's mother about that. Lucky for us, as I mentioned earlier, she's a very devoted mother. He has wonderful manners. I remember the first time we picked him up, I parked across the street from his house, and so instinctively I reached down to grab his hand, and his hand was already reaching towards me. And so that was our first, kind of bond, if you will, holding his hand as we walked across the street. And she has told him, when we pick him up, make sure that you listen to your big brother and your big sister. They're here to, teach you the right things, and, they're here in your best interest. And so I've seen her have those little pep talks with him before we leave, and right there in front of us. And so he knows what she expects of him, and but he's just a very respectful kid anyway. And so again, I can't truly articulate how excited and how pleased we are to have been matched with him.
Good. Kate, I got a couple minutes left. I see a press release that talks about 90 Men in 90 Days, which I believe started October 1st, so we're still in that period.
We are.
What's 90 Men in 90 Days?
So this is a specific intentional effort on our part to spread the word that we need more male volunteers raising their hand and jumping into this volunteer experience. So we actually did this campaign last year at this time, and it was tremendously successful. So we thought it was a really great time of year to bring it back, as we all are thinking about things that we're grateful for in our lives, and giving the gift of time is a really important decision in the life of a volunteer. We're so far in. As of yesterday, we were 38 applications in towards that 90. So we're excited to be there, but we've got some room to grow there, and want to keep spreading the word that we need more Big Brothers to call and to jump into this experience.
So we're 38 out of 90, and 90 days, say October 1st, so December 30th? Okay, that was good math for me. So I know, Sal, you've got a couple events coming up that you would like to share. What are they?
I do. Well, in my day job, I'm the CEO of an organization called Employment Connection, and we've got a couple of events coming up. First, this Saturday at the Missouri History Museum, we are joining our partners, including EHOC and the St. Louis International Film Festival, on a showing of a documentary called Chicago at the Crossroad. It was a official selection at the St. Louis International Film Festival, and the documentary and a panel discussion afterward will be focused on housing segregation and violence in America. So again, that's this Saturday, November 9th at 4 p.m. at the Missouri History Museum. It is a free event. And then the Saturday after that, Saturday, November 16th, we are joining with the United Way and some other partners to talk about what we can do to combat violent crime in the city of St. Louis. We know, unfortunately, a number of children have been killed just this year alone, and so we're very appreciative. We'll be joined by soon-to-be State Representative Rasheen Aldridge, State Representative Lakeisha Bosley, Alderman Brandon Bosley, and Rick Skinner from United Way and other partners to talk about what we as individuals and what we as organizations can do to combat this very real issue. So that event will be on Saturday, November 16th from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. A complimentary lunch will be provided, and that'll be at my office at Employment Connection, which is located at 2838 Market Street, across the street from Wells Fargo and Harris Stowe State University.
Sal, if people want to get in touch with you and or your organization, what are your contact information?
Sure. So our main number at the office is area code 314-333-5627. You can also visit us on Facebook, and you can reach us via our website at www.employmentstl.org. Again, both events are free, and if any of your listeners have family members, friends, neighbors who are looking for gainful employment, they can also reach out to us as well. We have literally hundreds of open positions that we need to have filled. But first time in my life, I'm in a situation where I've got more jobs available than people to fill them with. And so there's no reason why, if an individual wants to work, that they're not working. We don't turn anyone away, so they can also reach out to us for those services as well.
So, Kate, I'm looking here at your website. You have the Big Brothers program, Big Sisters, Big Couples, Big Family, and Teammates program. What's the Teammates program?
Yeah, the teammate is when it is two individuals that want to volunteer together. So it may be two neighbors, two friends, two coworkers that decide they want to do this volunteer experience together. Oftentimes we see that with the college student population, that we might have two students that want to mentor together.
And Young Leaders?
Young Leaders is for our teenage little brothers and little sisters that want to join our program, that were for some reason a 15-year-old doesn't really like being called a little. So we're still working on some language there, but played around with the idea of that as they get into those teen years that they're a young leader.
So how does someone get in touch with Big Brothers, Big Sisters?
So a couple options. Certainly call our office, which is 314-361-5900. Of course, you can find us on the web, which is www.bbbsemo.org. There's 3 B's in there. And then, of course, you can find us on Twitter or Facebook. Our Twitter handle is @BBBSEMO or Facebook.com/BBBSEMO.
Sam Martinez, thank you for coming today. Greatly appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here with you,
Kate
Charles.
Dopich from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri. I always like to say it that way. Thank you for being here. Any
Thank
last
you.
words before we sign off?
Well, I would just say it certainly was a pleasure for me to serve on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters for many years, and I'm also a proud commissioner of the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, which is under your very capable and outstanding leadership. So I certainly always appreciate the opportunity to visit and work with you, Charles. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Kate?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always a gift for us to be able to talk about the work we do, and we are so honored to be in the lives of so many volunteers and families in St. Louis, and would love the chance to work with more.
Thank you both very much. We're out.